And there we go. We're live. It is the Flyers game day. Jason Martinez, Brian Smith, Chris Terrian, Flyers Sharks tonight. A rare stream-only show to start us off tonight. And a rare coach suspension tonight. Is Torts up there, Bundy? Do you see him up there? I know he's not allowed to be around the team after 4
No, I haven't seen him around. Would be hard for him to hide, though.
Bundy, where I want to start is with this game against a team that's the second worst points percentage in the NHL in the Sharks. And you got to be wary not to have a hiccup when you've got the 7 games on deck that they have. Does the shellacking and what took place in Tampa mitigate the risk of that for this team tonight?
Yeah, I mean, you know what, Jace, looking at that game the other night, there's certain games in a year you probably have to toss it away. Maybe, you know, good teams, even great teams, probably 5 to 7 games a year where you just got to take it at the end and toss it no matter what. And that's just this night's the other team's going to be really on a roll. There's going to be more sense of desperation. You know, Tampa Bay, whatever you want to say about them, I mean, they were under the gun the other night, right? Like, they still are. They have to win a lot of games. And so, again, that's a Stanley Cup team. They've won 2 cups. They were ready to play. And the wheels for the Flyers, not that they went off, they were never on.
Right.
The other night. Like, they never had the wheels on the bus. I don't know if they just weren't prepared, if they had felt too good about the game in Florida. And then everything kind of unfolded from there. 4-0, Torts yaps off, protests, gets booted, 2 games, $50,000. And here we are tonight, which is what you're talking about, Jason and Brian, is the importance of this tonight, because you don't want to get caught in a trap. You know, I've seen stuff linger before, and you don't need to let last game linger. You focus on tonight, what you need to do against, quite frankly, a team that I'm not sure would win the American Hockey League. I mean that. That's how really bad it is. And they have a collection of guys that are probably a lot of minor leaguers. Flyers tonight is all about them. It's not about San Jose. It's about what they do. And playing the game the right way, getting pucks in deep, not taking high-risk chances early, even against a team like this. And you're going to feel like there's shifts. You're going to want to do that. But I implore them, and if I were the coach, I tell them, guys, keep this clean early, set the tone, play the game the right way, and then let's see where the game goes. If the Flyers play their A game and San Jose plays their A game, the Flyers win every single time.
I was thinking of this. This may be a philosophical question, but I've seen it happen twice this year. You mentioned Tampa Bay. They were under the gun. John Cooper called them out after a brutal loss to Calgary on home ice. Earlier this year, when the Flyers saw this team in San Jose, Mike Greer had called them out and kind of questioned their work ethic and all sorts of things. And both times, you know, the team comes out and they're basically steamrollers compared to what they were in the last game. And I don't know if there's a way to realize that that's coming and maybe adapts to how you play the first 10 minutes and kind of absorb that before you go back at them, or if that would just make it worse. But, you know, no player will ever use that as an excuse. But looking back at that Tampa game now, I almost feel like they would have rolled over whatever team was there that night, just basically on their circumstances.
They did. I mean, and listen, there was, like I said, just a lot of things that just didn't go the team's way that night. You know, Urson was off. You say whatever you want. I'm not going to.
The Flyers weren't sharp.
He was awful. The team was awful. And the end result of all of it, when you put it together, the backup goalie was awful. It was just one of those nights where, you know, to be completely honest about who the team was, it stunk. That being said, good teams respond and rebound. And that will be the mission here tonight.
Yeah, Bundy, and talking to Torts today for Hockey and Hounds, he mentioned sometimes, you know, a team needs to have it handed to them. If you lose that game 4-2, it doesn't have the same lasting effect to sharpen yourselves for this stretch and this period that they're in right now as it does being embarrassed and losing 7-0. That's an impact as well. And how you take it, you go, okay, we were off, they were on. It was a combination of those factors, but it is one game. But we gotta pick everything up because we can't have this happen again. We're in a playoff race, for goodness sake.
They are, and it's getting a little closer, and that's
really,
you know, that's I mean, it's getting dicey even more so. You know what's funny, guys? It shows you how hard it is to make the playoffs.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, when you look at, I mean, listen, this has been a great year, right? Hey, everybody. Yeah. It's been a great year for this team. Yet here they are holding on.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's the reality, and again, that's why the importance of getting more skill in the future, following the plan. One thing, guys, and I know there's nothing you can do about it. One thing that was absolutely evident the other night, and I know we can't do anything about it, but Walker and Sealer, not there the other night, man, was it noticeable.
Yeah.
Especially Walker's breakout ability. And
Yeah.
hopefully we could turn that pick into another puck-moving defenseman down the road.
And that's kind of been the question since that trade happened. Okay, who can step up and replace that, especially on the penalty kill? I mean, that's been such a big part of the success this year is these shorthanded goals, and a lot of that had to do with Sean Walker either moving the puck out or scoring them himself. I mean, he was getting up there and getting in the rush and everything like that. So, I'm assuming they've had this discussion where they need to find somebody that can kind of fill that role on the PK.
Yeah, and I mean, and again, certainly Sealer with his, shot blocking ability.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Danny realized that if you aren't able to sign him, you had to move him. You can't just keep a guy and let the clock wind out and maybe lose in the first round and have nothing. So you got to do that, and that's. I wish other GMs here had done stuff like that instead of hoping and praying. But at the same time, guys, it's a matter of responding appropriately, and the players that are here will have to figure it out. It's the next guy up attitude. Even though it was a trade, Walker left by trade, Sealer's injured. Whoever's here has got to step up and do the best job they can in that absence.
Yeah, you look at the situation too, Bundy. They got to get there's a few guys they got to get going on this team and provide some offense. Let me give you some numbers. I know Kevin Kurz put out this tweet, so I'll give him the credit for it from The Athletic.
Sure.
Here are the numbers on Tippett, Frost, Cates, Paling, Couturier, and Farabee. 3 goals over, so Tippett, 1 goal in his last 9. Frost, no goals in 11. Cates, 1 goal in 14. Paling, 1 goal in 12. Couturier, no goals in 12. Farabee, 1 goal in his last 18 games. They need those players to elevate their game and score for this team.
Yeah, I mean, and you don't need 3 or 4 of them a night to score. That's not realistic. But if one guy chips in, I mean, 1 goal here and there can be the difference in a game. And I'm speaking plain English, but I'm just saying is that, you're not going to get every guy going together.
Yeah.
So if Owen Tippett, another guy could break out, then somebody else could get going behind it. But I'll tell you what, it's really tough when scoring goes stale. It's brutal. It is, and it reeks upon everybody else. That's the worst thing with goal score. That's why I always said, never once did I ever walk into a locker room in my life having been expected to score a goal. And, man, that was a heck of a good feeling.
Yeah,
I think we've said
Johnny LeClaire there all the time too.
I think we've said it too, Jason. It's like it's great that Cates and Hathaway and Paling line is contributing, but they can't be the only one to contribute. Torch said it too. They can't score and check all the time. Like somebody else has got to get going there. And I guess it says something about the situation that with everything you just mentioned, Jason, that the Flyers are still in the spot. I mean, basically it's 4 teams for 3 spots at this point, and they're on the top side of that. So
they are, and they got the Islanders coming in here. I mean, and they lost last night, so that'd be the team. It's just funny how people are kind of we do a lot of scoreboard and standing watching right now, but destiny's in the Flyers' hands. And again, I can't stress the importance of tonight's game. Really, as if this is a 2-point layup game, if you play it right, and you don't want to be going in the last few minutes of this one, in a tight game where you're getting outworked. That would be unacceptable.
Yeah, totally agree. And Bundy, the thing is the players, as a player when you played, you can't look ahead to the pending 7 games beyond this one. You have to hyper-focus on just taking care of business tonight.
100%. You don't worry about Toronto. You worry about nothing else. 1 game at a time. And that should be the mantra anyway right now. I would expect the coaches tell the guys, listen, 1 game at a time. Don't look ahead. Don't look back. That's the other thing, too, this time of year. It's not only looking forward, it's putting the past behind you, like last game. I agree certainly with Torts a little bit. We get smacked 7-0, but problem is that was just so done so early that you kind of could leave it to the imagination at that point. And it was just move on, stay in the moment tonight, be ready for Toronto tomorrow. But that's it.
All right, Bundy, we're going to go ahead.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, let's let Bundy go. Yeah,
Bundy's got other services rendered coming up with Snow the Goalie. Big Al,
guys,
enjoy the game, brother.
Thanks, you too, guys. Great as always.
There he is, Chris Terrian. I love dipping inside his mind for how players react to losses
Yeah.
like that. I mean, that's tough, right? 7-0 is that leaves a mark.
Yeah.
4-2,
Well,
you
I
go,
mean,
okay, yeah, it's a game.
we'll sit here and watch games from afar, right? You know who's coming up down the schedule,
Yeah.
and it just happened. Like I watched the scoreboard the night Calgary beat Tampa 6-2 on Tampa's ice, and you just kind of grit your teeth. It's like, oh man, I wish that hadn't happened there. I mean,
Yeah.
you want to. There's one thing about not catching a team when they're hot, rattling off 9 wins in a row, but you know, if at all possible, you love to catch an opponent on the road, especially coming off a win, because when they lose or they're coming off of just a big loss like that. They're not very happy. Like San Jose, they're staring down the barrel of a gun here tonight, because I'll tell you what, the Flyers are not happy with how that Tampa thing went, and it just keeps on rolling downhill, I guess.
Yeah, and that's why I think the first 10 minutes tonight will be extremely interesting. And, lineup decisions too, right? Can you see who's out on the ice, and are
Um,
they
I can
are they going
see, I can
11,
see,
12 and
I can
6?
see tweets from people who can see. It's literally
Okay.
directly behind me. At some point, I need to get a mirror or something up here so I can see what's going on. But it does
The
appear
reverse.
back to 12-6 tonight, which is nice. We like that. The Flyers going to sit Cam Atkinson, Nick Delorier, and Adam Ginning.
Okay.
So they're going to go with again the conventional lineup, and I had a list here.
I have it
I
here.
do know you have it there. Okay, go for it.
Yeah, I do. And Jennings is on an emergency recall. He would have to be fully recalled to be able to go into the lineup.
That
So
is
that,
correct. The Jennings
yeah,
can only play if the Flyers don't have 6 healthy defensemen, at this point, that wild card was Yegor Zamula because he was a little under the weather.
yeah,
So yeah, he's got to be, he's got to be like the last option, and they can regularly recall him, but without getting into the boring details of the CBA, this time of year, you're only permitted 4 recalls, 4 regular recalls from your AHL affiliate, and the Flyers used 3 right after the deadline for it, which
yeah,
was the day of the trade deadline. So they had to, in order for Bobby Brink, Ronnie Attard, and Felix Sandstrom to be eligible to play in the AHL at all for the rest of this year, they had to send them down and recall them just on paper. And so they burned 3 of the 4 right there. So, they at some point might just bring Jennings back up, but I don't think it's going to happen as of yet because there's still quite a long ways. You can emergency recall people all day long. So
yeah.
that's not like that's an issue. But if they want to take a look at, let's say, an Emile Andre or somebody along those routes, they would need that regular recall to do it.
And you have to meet the certain parameters of the emergency recall as well, as you mentioned, which is important. Zamula looks like he's going to play with Eric Johnson tonight on the
Yes.
Flyers' third pair. It'll be Stahl and Attard together, and then obviously York and Sanheim. Sam Emerson gets the start tonight. I thought this probably was a game that was circled for Felix Sandstrom, and I wonder if they pivoted on that based on how the game went the other night to get Sam right back in there.
I think you're probably right. It would be a bit of a stinger to have him only play whatever that was, 10 minutes, 11 minutes.
10:51.
And then,
like that.
so I almost think I think you're probably right in your thought, and I think they might have just flip flopped it once they put Felix in. Hey, all right, this is your game now, bud. Instead of Tuesday. So because again, you and I talked about it just sitting around today. After that third goal, which came 7 minutes in, I think, John Tortorella went down to Felix Sandstrom and said, next one you're in. You can see it happening on the bench. And so once they realized, I think that game was kind of out of hand, out of reach, they decided that, they're going to give him the rest of that game. So, that point, that was probably not salvageable. And so Hurst goes tonight.
Yeah, so you don't give your starter any more lashings, and he gets a little bit of rest to boot in that game. And Sam, one thing about Sam Emerson is anytime he's had a rough outing, he has really bounced back. It's one of the things that I've been most impressed with his game. Obviously, the shootout performances and the confidence that he carries. are very impressive as well. But his ability as a young goaltender to not let that game influence the next game, which is such a key to goaltending. Like amnesia is one of the greatest skills for a goalie in game and game to game.
Memory of a goldfish, right? That's the hot term these days.
Yeah.
I don't think I honestly don't think any of those. Well, I guess I should say I don't know about the one that went under his arm. That might have bugged him a little bit, but
Yeah, that
whatever
bugged
it
the hell out of
is,
him.
yeah, whatever it is, he gets over it very, very quickly. It's not like it's going to sit around and just be kind of stewing for the rest of the game, and then going to cause you to not make a save down the road. He's been very good at getting that out of his system, and that's what you have to do as a goalie in this league. Because I think I remember hearing Marc-Andre Fleury tell a story once about he knew he had a problem when during a game he found himself preparing for what he was going to say to the media after the game about
Ooh.
such and such goal that went in or something like that. Like he knew if he had those thoughts in his head, he knew that that was something that he had to deal with. So yeah, as long as as long as it's something. I mean, we've talked about it too. How it seems like John Tortorella has that. Like if he has a disagreement with a player or something like that, or with the referee, as soon as it's done, it's done. And
Yeah.
a half hour later. I don't know if you read some of the stories that came out after that whole thing happened, but I think it was
The Kevin Kerr's one. Yeah.
Dave Jackson, was it, who said the same thing? Like, normal people like you and me, you have a shouting match with somebody and you're thinking next time you see him, oh, this is going to be an awkward thing. Dave Jackson would go over to him and say, look, this is what I thought. And which is just like, Dave, it's done. That was half an hour ago. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
It's one of the unique traits about him.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you just, like, I've worked with people in the radio industry. They just needed to blow their top and be heard, and that was good enough.
Yeah.
You didn't need to rehash it or anything else. You probably heard me because I yelled it.
Yeah. And sometimes that's just how he communicates with people. And I think folks are realizing that here now. That if it's something that the average person thinks might be harsh or something like that, it's just that's just it. And so it's just the way that he communicates. So.
Yeah, there's no hard feelings in it. We're out here to compete, and sometimes the temperature may rise. The same thing with players. Like when he gave Brink and that line an earful when they came off the ice,
right?
You want them to learn from it, but it doesn't mean that you're dead to me.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if I recall correctly, in that that was in Washington, right? So
correct.
I think after the game, back to back, right? Washington, Ottawa. I think the next day, Ole Lixell did not play, but I don't think it was because of that. They threw Bobby Brink right back out there, and I think they said to him after the game, "Okay, it's done. You're back in tomorrow. Go get him." And
dust it off.
And he had a great game. Bobby did. Yep. So it's just how it is.
I really liked his response in that game. He was still pushing and being creative and incurring risk and doing the things they want him to do, not being safe just to collapse defensively and not be on the ice when a goal gets allowed. That's going to happen in hockey. It's just the way it is. It is the Flyers and the Sharks tonight. Sharks with the second worst points percentage in the league. Only one team is below them, and that would be the Chicago Blackhawks. The Sharks are fully committed into a teardown rebuild at this point, but the Flyers got to make sure they do not take this team lightly. It's amazing, Brian. You can go from a game last Thursday against the top points percentage team, the Florida Panthers. You get that 2-1 win, and now you got the Sharks tonight. But they're all on the schedule, and I think this is such an important 2 points because of the 7 games coming up. And they got to treat it that way.
I mean, again, looking at the way the schedule shakes out, not just for the Flyers, but for the other teams around them, the schedule going down the stretch for just about everybody has a lot of playoff teams. But the Flyers, they've got 7 in a row, whatever, and then they'll have a bunch out of the playoffs. You can't count the Islanders right now, which doesn't really count. But do we need to get to our radio audience?
We're still listening to some Metallica right now.
Wow, nice. So,
Ate My
listen.
Bitch. That's the name of the
So
song.
when you have an
All right.
opportunity like this, you want to grab the points because, Washington goes to Anaheim the other day. They grab the points. Islanders are going to get Ottawa here in a couple of days. They
And
grab
Buffalo.
the points. And Buffalo. Then they got the Devils down the pike there. They got Chicago and Columbus back to back in early April. So you got to assume that these other teams are going to grab those points. And if they do, and you can't get points in a game like this, that's when you're going to look back at the end of the year and be like, oh, man, I wish we'd gotten those points. So
They got a run of tough games after Ottawa: New York, Carolina, Detroit, Winnipeg, New Jersey, Florida, Tampa before they come here. All right, let's join our radio audience. Let me take off the right headphones.
Is the Flyers pregame show on 93.3 WMMR.
That's right. It is Flyers game day. It's the Flyers and the Sharks. I'm getting a little reverb. Sorry. But it is the Flyers and the Sharks tonight from Wells Fargo Center as the Flyers look to grab two very important points in the standings against what you would deem as an inferior opponent with 7 games on deck after this one against top teams in the NHL. Flyers have been good against those teams, but tonight they got to make sure they're good against one of the teams that's not at the top of the NHL, and they need to do that early and often here against the Sharks tonight, Smitty.
Yeah, this is again, we were just talking about it before we came on the air that this is one of those games where there's 2 points there that the Flyers need to get, and it's not just because they're trailing, it's not because they've got to catch teams, it's because there's a very tight race going on here. It's essentially 4 teams for 3 spots, and all of the other 3 teams are going to have games against some of these bottom end teams, against Chicago's, against Columbus's, San Jose's, what have you. And so you want to make sure you're getting these points because you got to assume that the teams around you are going to get the points when they play them. So the Flyers have in order to keep themselves from being in a situation where they have to beat a New York Rangers or a Boston Bruins club down the road here, down the stretch. They need to make sure they can take care of business in games like this.
Brian, the beginning of the season, this team stayed relatively healthy and, kind of dodged the injury bug. But figures at this time of year, it kind of rears its head. And especially on the blue line core, missing several guys. You obviously have the trade of Sean Walker. You have Nick Seeler out, Rasmus Ristolainen out, and you're still without Jamie Drysdale. But at this time of year, look, teams deal with injuries. You're going to have to overcome it. And some young guys are going to be asked to do that, including Roddy Adder tonight.
Absolutely. And we were talking about when this season was going along, like, all right, is this sustainable? Like, how long can the Flyers keep this going? And would they be a couple of injuries away from not being able to keep it going anymore? And I think the fact that the injuries are on defense has helped them a little bit because the entire team plays defense in a given game. This is a team that defends as a team. But that being said, you're definitely missing some of your horses back there that cut down on scoring chances against. And I think that some of these guys really have stepped up and taken the opportunity. I think Ronnie Adder's looked pretty darn good in the couple of games he's played so far. I actually thought Adam Ginning looked really good the other night. He is up on an emergency recall, so he can't play unless the Flyers only had 5 healthy defensemen. Yegor Zamula is good to go, so he'll sit. But I think that game in Florida, I think the Flyers can feel very comfortable having Ginning back there helping things out. And then obviously Eric Johnson's going to help too. You can't really evaluate him or Dennis Gurianov based on that Tampa game. I thought Gurianov actually looked pretty good. He jumped into a few situations there. But eager to see how Eric Johnson kind of helps settle things down back there tonight in this, which should be a more normal game situation.
Yeah, suddenly they have a lot of size out back on the blue line too. Cam York will play with Sanheim, who had a maintenance day yesterday, but Stahl, a bigger body with Ronnie Adder, and then Igor Zamula and Eric Johnson together on the other pair.
Again, certainly not dissing Sean Walker or Nick Seeler or any of those guys because the Flyers definitely miss them. They can't wait to get Seals back, but those guys are 5'11", 6 foot maybe. I mean, Walker's I think 5'9". Ronnie Adder's 6'3". Adam Ginning is 6'5", I think. 6'5", somewhere in there. And Eric Johnson is a 6'5" guy. So they definitely have gotten bigger just with those three guys having to play in the lineup.
No question about it. The forward groups tonight, and a little bit of intrigue here because where's Guarionov fit in this lineup? Here's the lines. Scott Lawton with Owen Tippett and Tyson Forster. Then Ryan Paling, Cates, and Hathaway. Set it and forget it, Bry. They're abiding by, even though Torts is technically suspended for tonight, still setting that line and forgetting it.
He's watching the game with you, right?
I don't think so. He'll be upstairs able to watch. He wasn't allowed to be around the team from 4 o'clock for a 7 o'clock game. Couturier, Gurianov, and Konechny together, and then Frost, Farabee, and Brink. Interesting line combinations, to say the least.
I thought Gurianov was maybe the lone bright spot of that Tampa Bay game. I thought he jumped into a few different situations where he was noticeable, and the one thing he kind of picked up on during the first practice that he had with the Flyers yesterday is this guy can skate. I mean, He's got wheels on him. So that hopefully is going to sit right in the Flyers' penchant for transition offense that they've developed this year, that he can lend some speed to that effort and help attack in that manner. So, yeah, I'm actually pretty stoked to see how he settles in with these forwards.
Boy, he's got an opportunity playing with Konechny and Couturier. Yeah. That's going to be a line that's going to be – I'm real interested to get eyes on the player in person, because I think you can see so much more about the way they move on the ice, and more importantly, where they go.
Exactly. You get a better look at that when you can see how they're coming up the ice, because the cameras are always with the puck, and the players obviously are not always with the puck. So I think you'll get a good sense tonight on kind of his hockey sense, and we don't know why he got buried in the American Hockey League, but I think this might be one of those things that works out well for Philadelphia.
Yeah, and he's a pending UFA, so he may be playing for his NHL opportunity going forward here against the Sharks tonight, as Gurianov and Eric Johnson make their Flyers home debuts tonight. Stay tuned. We've got Tim Saunders and Todd Fedoruk standing by with the countdown to face-off, followed by the first period action of the Flyers Sharks from Wells Fargo Center. You've been listening to Flyers Game Day on the BetRivers.com Flyers Broadcast Network.